Hello and welcome to Springboard, your virtual university. My name is Albert Okran, welcoming you on behalf of Team Springboard. This is your most inspirational show and that place where the greatest minds in the world converge. Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Ghana and the Enterprise Group, with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. Today, we bring you a special time with a CEO. Every year, I look forward to hearing the thoughts of Selorm Adadevoh on the year that has gone past or about to end, finding out how the year has gone, not just for himself as a leader, but also for the great organization that he leads. So today, it's my time with Selorm, CEO of MTN Ghana, finding out about the year 2023. Selorm, one word for the year that is drawing to a close.
One word. I think it would be challenging.
Wow. Good to see you. I trust you're well.
Pleasure is mine. Good to see you too. It's been a while.
Wonderful. And how is MTN doing?
Doing well. We're trying. It's a very interesting period for us. And, we have a number of different things coming together at the same time. So we're definitely demonstrating a resilience in a very difficult period. But the outcome of that, I would say, is positive.
Let me start by thanking you on behalf of Team Springboard for your support for this intervention. By virtue of what we do, we travel across the country a lot, interacting with beneficiaries of not just this, but other interventions that we partner with you on. And it's always heartwarming to hear young people, up and coming executives talk about the impact of this program on their lives and on their careers. And I would like to say thank you to yourself and MTN Ghana for partnering with us for the past 15 years.
It's a pleasure. And to be honest, when I learned about our sponsorship and what you do, I'm a big admirer of what Springboard does. And I'm glad we've been able to be a partner to this incredible program for so long. You can count on us to continue to support this program and the impact it has had on young people into the future as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So for the benefit of many CEOs tuned in today hearing your voice, give us an overview of the year 2023.
Sure. Let me look at it from maybe a number of different angles. All right. 2023, as we all know, has started off with a very difficult external environment where we had a macro indices at levels that we've never experienced, at least not in my lifetime. From a business perspective, puts a lot of pressure on the business, and it puts into question your ambitions for the year. So I started off the year starting to think, are our ambitions for the year realizable? What do we have to do to continue to deliver in the manner in which we had initially imagined, or at least, anticipated? But then the second thing is, what do you also do for your customers, for your staff, for your people? Because the external environment impact is not only on the business, it's on everybody. And everybody feels the pinch of all of this. So for us, for this year, we've had to really demonstrate resilience. First of all, we've also had to accept certain situations and decide to what extent we exercise these ambitions that we have or the aspirations that we have, and what we give up in trying to achieve that. When things don't line up the way you expect it to, you have to accept that something else has to give for you to deliver on the areas that you determined to be the priority. And that's what we've had to do. So it's been a real test of prioritization, a real test of resilience. But in all of that, you learn new things. And you also develop in other ways. And I've seen us as a team evolve and develop in a very different way than we would have even imagined. And the outcome of all of that, in my humble opinion, has been very positive. I mean, I couldn't thank my team at MTN enough. I mean, they've been excellent. They've kept a smile in spite of everything else that's been happening. And every day, despite their personal challenges, they've managed to come to work and deliver. And, for that, I'm extremely grateful.
What would you look back at as probably the most defining development this year?
But there have been several developments, through the year. And, one of the big ones I would say, has been deciding what you give up. We're not used to deciding what we give up. We're a very ambitious business. We have objectives to try to drive adoption of digital services to as many Ghanaians as possible. And we've had to make decisions. When, Forex goes up to a certain level and you had in mind to buy, X volume of equipment, but you can no longer buy that. That means that your impact on Ghanaians, on communities would also diminish. And trying to accept some of these things can be very difficult, right? But we've had to go through a process of saying, what do we give up? And what do we focus on? And that decision-making process has been quite testing and extremely challenging, because there are things that you have to do. There are things that you want to do because you're passionate about some of these initiatives, but you have to give them up because it's not practical to do it all. And that has been a big test. And accepting that hasn't been easy.
And I guess thinking about the beneficiaries who will be denied as a result of your inability makes it even worse.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the bigger part, because you do get the criticism. MTN hasn't done this. Why isn't MTN doing this? Why can't MTN do better in this area? And it's painful to hear when it's out of your control. But at the same time, you have a desire to do exactly what others are expecting of you. And accepting some of these things in the short term, extremely difficult. And we see how staff go through this because they get berated at home, their family members. It's a tough situation to be in, but look, you have to take it on the chin as a leader, and you have to keep going. And hopefully we encourage others that we still have everyone's interest at heart, and to the extent possible we will deliver it in the medium term.
Let's swing out of this to my other role as a pastor. I find that I have much more responsibility than my dashboard seems to suggest, because literally everybody's pain is your pain. And there is only so much that you can do. So I share the feeling that you have about the possibilities that are there, the people whose lives will be changed if only you could do all the things that you want to do, and sometimes finding that you are limited, no matter how hard you try. Let's go to some areas that have dominated our conversation here at Springboard this year in particular. We've tried to look at the fastest growing industries in Africa from last year, and said that let's hold conversations around them and see even how much they are interwoven and the role technology is playing in all of them. So the ones that have dominated our thoughts are fintech, food, real estate, food meaning the whole agricultural value chain, real estate, e-commerce, and logistics. These 5, some studies suggest, have been the industries to watch in Africa in the past year. Looking at MTN as a business, how have you been an enabler in these sectors?
I mean, MTN's core is to provide technology to solve basic problems in different value chains, in different industries, in different sectors. So fundamentally, the core of what we do, digital solutions for Africa's progress, is at the core of impacting these industries. I won't go through each of them one by one, but some of them are notable, right? If I take fintech, for example, I mean, MTN's ambition to get into fintech, all the way back from 2009, and where we've come today with Momo, and how we've democratized financial services for people who were initially completely excluded, and there was no real plan for inclusion of these communities, right? So MTN's impact in that is extremely clear. But once you get people into the financial services space who were originally excluded, the next question is, how can you move them up the ladder? And today, a lot of our focus is on taking people from basic financial services and financial inclusion to different stages up the ladder of financial inclusion, so that they can actually become bigger participants that impacts the ecosystem. And we're seeing a lot of acceptance of some of the things we're bringing in. I mean, just, basic P2P transfers or peer-to-peer transfers would have defined financial services 5, 6, 7 years ago. Today, there are people who are buying shares on the stock exchange. There are people that are lending or borrowing from us. using our lending products. There are people that are investing, buying treasury bills. So all of these things are transforming a space where we're saying, how do we create wealth within the communities that would, not have access to any of these types of instruments to drive growth within the ecosystem and within the environment itself? If I take some of the other value chains, technology solutions that affect, we talk about food. The food value chain has very discrete components, all the way from, technology to farm. We're talking about agri-tech and what you do there, collection of data, precision farming. These are all things that have a lot to do with technology. Now, I'm not suggesting that we've adopted these in mass, but we see small scale farmers starting to change the way they think about food production, about farming, about efficiencies. When you go from there to, how you price, how you deliver, how you supply, and this may be where logistics comes in, which is one of the industries you talked about. Again, the enormous amount of data to make decisions about efficient logistics is incredible. So just merely providing a network is a starting point, but we don't want to end there. I mean, we want to go up the value chain so that we can actually influence decision making around some of these core areas that will drive economic growth. And in fact, one of the things I say a lot is that the world will be defined by technology if it's not already. And, as a young 22, 23-year-old, this is what I saw. I mean, I studied civil engineering. And I remember having a chat with my parents and I said, I feel like the world is going to be defined by computers very soon. And I need to be part of that. So leaving civil engineering and, immersing myself in technology, I'm not sure. I still can't explain why I had this strong conviction, but no one else around me believed and could see what I saw. But I just felt that technology was going to change everything. And it was irrelevant if you had core skills in civil engineering, if you didn't have a technology understanding, because all the things I had to do, I could do now using computers. So in fact, technology and what we do can change this country enormously. And this is what Africa's real power is. If we're really going to be competitive globally, we have to take advantage of technology and leapfrog a lot of the stages that the Western world went through. We have that available today. And I really hope that we're able to take this on and make that difference. And MTN will be at the core of that.
Apart from giving people the entryway, like you mentioned, you are now interested in how well they are progressing in their use. Do you track these matrices, and how does it make you feel when you see them coming up the way that you are intending for them to do?
Look, we spend a lot of time thinking about the impact of technology in different areas and what role we should play as a business to influence that impact to even higher levels, right? The second dimension is scale. For us, doing things that have an impact is one thing, but without achieving scale, your overall impact will be muted. So the two things are important. On a unit basis, impact, but on a broad basis, in terms of scale, that impact should be able to be extendable. When we look at the African continent today, and when we think about Ambition 2025, this is what we see. One of the biggest barriers that we have identified is the inability for us to develop solutions for our local problems. We have to import solutions that were not designed for Africa's problems. We have to pay huge sums of foreign currency to bring these in. These dependencies distort our economic balance, right, in the first place. And all of that because we don't have a production base when it comes to technology within the markets that we operate. So if you can create a catalyst for these developers or these developments to happen locally, it starts to change not only our dependency on imported services, but also it starts to grow, provide jobs, provide an economic viability path, and it also limits the economic impact of some of these external dependencies. So something as simple as, presenting fintech as a platform, where today developers who, 5 years ago couldn't develop a solution and just connect an API to their product can do that today through MTN. What that means is more people have an incentive to develop solutions. And we're seeing that starting to come to fruition. Of course, it's not at a level that we would like, but we're taking the first steps to the next steps, which would be starting to look at how do we take this into something that's a lot bigger, into scale. You look at Ayoba, which is a super app today, and the beauty of Ayoba is, over time, today we have 30 million active users in Africa on Ayoba. If I develop a local app that is presented in Ayoba, I immediately have access to 30 million people. I don't believe there is any single platform today that can give you 30 million Africans on a single platform. So these are all transformational initiatives that are geared towards largely changing the fundamentals of the economies within which we operate, because we'll start to depend less externally and more internally. And that's a powerful thing, apart from the direct impact it has on job creation, economic viability, and all of that. So it's exciting for us. And look, I'm extremely, extremely motivated, very excited about what's ahead of us and what MTN can bring to this continent. Of course, we need partners. We need other people to come on board for this to actually happen at the levels that we need. And that's really where we're going at the moment. So.
Springboard, your virtual university. My name is Albert Okran. I get the pleasure of spending time with Selorm Adadevoh, CEO of MTN Ghana, talking about the year 2023, talking about MTN's business, and very importantly, connecting the dots to the continent and its progress, bringing it to the local case here in Ghana, and maybe finding out a bit more about him and his learnings for the benefit of CEOs who also want to take your craft to the next level. So I'm talking about a pipeline of people who are developing solutions. You want to see a bigger pipeline of people developing solutions. Should we rethink the way we educate about technology in our part of the world, just so we can have more people turning out the solutions at the rate that you think you would like?
Absolutely. And if I could wish for one thing, that would be the one big thing that can change just the basics of how we think about these solutions. And I mean, education is core to that. So the answer is yes, absolutely.
What should we do differently?
There is a need for us to rethink. One of the things I have said and I keep saying is, today when I go to school, what am I studying? Right? And I was listening to some program on the internet one day, and it was quite damning what was said. And I'm not saying I fully buy into it, but there was something in it that I think we can all learn from. What the person was saying was, today in Africa, we're learning Western methods. We're learning things that are relevant to Western development. And for us to be relevant in this world, we feel that, and I'm a victim of this, we feel that we need to master what the Western world has done before we can apply anything to our local situation. How do we reverse this, where we take our comparative advantage in these markets and develop an educational system that helps us capitalize on these comparative advantages? Very simple one. We talked about food, for example. If I introduce technology in schools today, but I introduce technology focused on how do we create an agri-tech industry. So people who've come through the technology stage in Ghana are focused on its application towards agriculture, because we have all this land, we have the sun, we have soil that's ready to be, used to generate productive food outcomes. If we do this, then all of a sudden, the opportunities that we focus on solve our local problems. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to identify, maybe strategically where we want the mind to go. I mean, all these other things are important, but I'm a big believer, if we don't get food right, if we don't get agriculture right,
Absolutely.
honestly, it's a non-starter, because we'll still have to depend on others for our basic needs. And once you depend on others for your basic needs, and how do you create value up the chain? And that's really what our education needs to solve. So I don't know how to position the new educational system, but the outcome of our education should lead us to taking advantage of our comparative, should lead us to capitalize on our comparative advantage so that we can actually be more self-serving.
Quick one about the point you make about agriculture, the value chain as something that we must get right. Would it be your position that with everything that we are doing, that is a no-brainer that Ghana and by extension Africa should focus on?
Look, I couldn't emphasize that enough. It's such a big opportunity for us. And, why agriculture is still looked upon as not so attractive, not so interesting. I don't personally, I can't understand it, because it's our solution to a lot of things. It's our solution to a lot of things.
Jobs, employment opportunities, feeding ourselves.
Everything. And I saw, you read the history of the world and you see countries like India who did this. I mean, when we had the war, Ukraine, Russia war, we saw the impact on us, and there've been a lot of commentary around, why are we even dependent on this small nation? And we've seen what Israel has done, from, desert land into arable land, using technology to drive agriculture. I mean, there are all these things that are happening. So the first question is, why aren't we, who've been blessed with so much more than these other markets, why can't we do more with what we have? And we have to. Absolutely.
So for everyone who is looking for opportunities, sometimes you talk to people and you realize that everyone looks at their mentor, their role model, and because they have gone into a particular field, they assume that if they want to become that, they must go into that field. You started from engineering and then branched into tech and have done phenomenal work here. What would you say to people who tend to have what you may want to call a tunnel vision about what they can do with their careers based on what they learned in school?
I mean, I'm guilty of what I'm going to say, but but I'll share it anyway. Look, I've learned a lot about the world around us and the possibilities. And when I was growing up, there was a fixation on certain types of professions. It was engineering, medicine. There's still a lot more respect for these professions, right? But for young ones, I really do believe the entrepreneurial path, all the countries that have done well, you look at China, you look at the US historically that have done well, entrepreneurship has been the fundamental ingredient to that success. The more entrepreneurs you can create who are successful, the better your economy will be, because entrepreneurs are typically solving local problems in ways that are efficient, that are economically viable and sustainable for the most part. And that will continue to drive growth in the economy over time. But they also create jobs, they create inspiration, and more people see what someone who's an ordinary person has been able to do. They get inspired, and then they toe the same path. I mean, you can only have so many MTNs in a country. So, we all need to encourage the entrepreneurial spirit to be harnessed a lot more. And I would like to encourage young people looking up for careers to not only think about dropping a CV at a big company, but also think about what can you create, because there are lots of needs around. And, really investing in the opportunities that are obvious around us and taking some risk will help us get down the path that we need to. So I'd encourage young people to think beyond just a corporate job, and also what opportunities and value you can create around the problems we have.
This is Springboard of Virtual University, and my blessing today is being able to hang out with my good friend Selorm Adadevoh, talking about the year that is about to draw into a close, the learnings from it. And when I come back from this break, I'm going to be finding out from him the learnings on his own journey and how they can inspire that corporate or business executive or even young entrepreneur to say, I can also live out my dream and be fulfilled without necessarily holding the position that he holds. So let's draw from Selorm's wellspring of wisdom when we come back from this break. Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Ghana and the Enterprise Group, with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. In Monday's edition of the Daily Graphic, you will find a full transcript of this conversation with Selorm. Get it, share it to the loved ones, and let the learnings inspire you to reach out for a big year in the coming year. Please don't go away.
Agriculture is for everyone, and I dream of the day that everyone will have an agriculture, vocational, or technical story to share. My name is Araba Kumsin, and I welcome you to Ghana Grows Ejuma.
Ghana Grows Ejuma. Coming soon on radio, TV, and online.
Well, now that we're all here, I want to start by saying what a difficult year it has been for all of us. But then there's also a lot to be grateful for. You know, like when I bumped my car into a taxi right at our junction, and the insurance company paid my claims the very same day.
And remember the surprise cash bonus we received for our funeral finance plan? That is what sponsored our trip to the beach.
And the song we sang all the way to Pram Pram. I'm also grateful that every passing year brings me closer to enjoying the retirement benefits I have contributed so much to. And how since I started working from home after the COVID pandemic, I've been taking better care of myself. Even my doctor can attest to that.
Speaking of that, I'm very grateful to the team at Transitions for giving Grandpa a befitting send-off.
Well, on a happier note, I am grateful to have found an affordable office space to rent at Advantage Place.
Enterprise, your advantage.
Pascal is showing his boss the efficient new technology they've installed. She is pleased, but now she's asking, why is that still there? Pascal explains that he hired a security guard to protect the data shed. The boss is not so pleased anymore. If you haven't upgraded to cloud storage yet, it's time to get business done better with MTN Business.
Welcome back to the MTN House edition of Springboard, your virtual university, as I get to interact with my good friend Selorm Adadevoh, talking about the year 2023 and pulling out some of his learnings and lessons from the year, and also the business experience in this year under review, if I may call it so, even though the year has still a couple of weeks more to go. Selorm, thanks for sharing your thoughts with us in the first part. Let's go now to your learnings on your journey. I have a few friends who are engineers who argue that engineers make the best managers. And I think it's a very interesting topic, but having said that, how did you find yourself doing what you do, and what are the learnings that we can glean from you for the benefit of our listeners and viewers?
Sure. Now, let me just sort of say your friends are right.
Well,
For the avoidance of doubt.
Well, am I not surprised? You know a number of them anyway.
I am not biased at all. No, but on a more serious note, my journey has been an interesting one. I have to say it has probably been defined by my personal ambition and, to an extent, my personal vision for where the world was going. I was talking earlier about, when I first graduated from school, I just had this, and I've been trying really hard to figure out what was driving me at the time. I mean, how could I have such strong conviction when I really didn't know what will happen in the future? But I just had this strong belief that, technology, computers were going to be defining in every way possible in the world, and I had to be part of it if I was going to be relevant. So that took me onto a new journey. But ultimately, my ambition to get to a certain stage in my career was the fundamental driver. It gave me the energy to take some risk. It gave me the energy to be resilient because you had an objective, you had challenges. But because you were so fixated on the objective and you had such strong conviction.
What was the objective, if I may ask?
No, the objective at the time, when I first decided to get into technology space, I wanted to become an expert at the highest level. And I don't know what that was defined as, but I just knew that I wanted to become an authority in technology. And for someone who went to school, we didn't have computers, moved after school to the UK and started learning about technology. I just sort of felt, I needed to push the limits of my own abilities when it comes to technology. And That conviction was extremely strong. I can't explain it. I have thought hard to try to rationalize why I had this. I don't know what it was, but it was there, and I really believed in it. So trying to get to the top, and at the time I started off, doing a lot of Microsoft training, which IT and technology had, that different areas within technology that you can specialize. You could be a developer, you could be an infrastructure person, you could be a support person. I started off as a desktop support engineer, focused on Microsoft and trying to get companies from mainframes into the more modern sort of Microsoft suite. And that was my first project. And through that, I thought it wasn't challenging enough. I felt I could do more. And that didn't define sort of the level that I wanted to be in technology. And then I discovered, wide area networks and infrastructure, building solutions, network solutions. And I thought this was quite testing. I tried software development. I struggled, but I thought there was enough of a challenge on the network side that it satisfied my definition of, getting to the highest levels and becoming an authority in a particular space. So I towed the line of infrastructure and I specialized on Cisco, and Cisco had a very clear developmental path. They had different levels: CCNA, CCMP, CCDP, CCIE. So I went all the way through to the highest level at the time. And then that's when my ambition started to change. When I got to that level, the first question was, what can I now do with my technology? And how do I influence business decision making? At the time, I was working for one of my competitors here, the parent company of one of my competitors here. And, I kept asking the question, who's making the business decisions for us to implement using technology? And I wanted to move from being just a technology delivery person into decision making. So that took me to the next stage of my growth. And that's what led me to pursuing an MBA and getting this ambition to become a CEO. So it all sort of was incremental as I went along the journey. But at each stage, what was most notable is that I had an ambition that was driving me to take a certain action. And until today, that's fundamentally how I operate. I always set an ambition and it forces me to act, because for myself, I've always said, if I commit to something, then I will do what it takes. And I use the word conviction a lot, but that conviction is what drives me, and it's driven me all the way through. It allows you to be resilient. You overcome challenges because you have the end in mind. And somehow you have to believe in your mind that you have what it takes. And even when you're failing, you have to believe that the failure is giving you enough to take on the next stage and is not intended to bring you backwards, right?
Have you failed before?
Several times.
How does it feel?
It's not
You could somebody who's a mountaintop person, like you have it all figured out. When you mention feel, like all our antennas will go up.
No, I failed a lot.
It's the kind that will make you cry.
Yes, I failed a lot. And I'm still failing. The way you view failure is important, right? And, I think one of my siblings said to me the last time, I was making a joke about one of my trips, and I was telling about these funny experiences I had. I don't think they believed me. They thought I was making things up.
But I'm not alone.
But I have all these experiences because I take a certain type of risk, and in all of that, you would succeed in half and you'd fail in half. But I view those things as important experiences to enrich your toolkit, because it helps shape your perspective in general on issues. So when I'm in a boardroom tomorrow and we're trying to solve a problem and I come up with an idea, I have no idea where the idea is coming from, but I'm a big believer that all these experiences, some that were successful, some that failed, have enriched me with something that allows me to have this unique perspective. So you can't take away, you can't disaggregate. If someone has only ever been successful, that person is a big risk, because you don't know how they would respond the day they fail. But someone who's been through multiple failures is more resilient, because they figured out how to deal with it, how to detach emotion, and how to be objective in decision making, even in a situation of high stress or in a crisis situation. And those people tend to be stronger leaders because they can cope with a variety of situations. And then leadership is not linear.
Let me go back to the word you started this second part of the conversation with, the word conviction, which you say is very much part of you. I almost said arsenal, but I won't use the word arsenal because your interpretation of arsenal will be very different from. So, what word do I use? Your toolkit. I would not use arsenal. Your toolkit. Conviction is a key word for you. I've had conversations with people you and I will both know. People like Kweku Bedwado at Stanchard. People like Albert, ACN, who were very specific in saying that not only did I have conviction, I actually set a date and said, by this time, Ishmael Yamson, who chairs your board, does he still chair your board?
He still chairs.
Yes. So Dr. Yamson told a story on Springboard about that as well. Walking into an interview, he actually added for good measure that he came all the way from his hometown, he had dusted his on his white shirt and said, I'll be CEO of this company in 20 years. And he was chairman of Unilever in 20 years. Kweku Bedwado shared a similar story. Albert Isian shared a similar story. Did you put a timeline on yours as well? And did it happen? Tell us.
This is very interesting because just yesterday I was talking about this to one of my team members. And I said, I've managed my life and my career in time bands, right? At every stage, I have an objective for 3 to 5 years, a specific objective. Because you've committed to it, it forces you to act. And I keep saying this, what's your trigger to act? What holds people back is you haven't put yourself under enough pressure to act. And you've given yourself too much room to act. If you said, I want to become a CEO in the next 10 years, but you said, definitely by 2033, I need to be a CEO. That's very different from saying, in the next 3 to 5 years, I want to become CEO. Because one acts more aggressively. Because you have 10 years, it's a long time. So instead of saying, I want to become a CEO in 10 years, you might want to say, I want to become a C-level exec in 3 years. So get to that next stage. When you get to that next stage, define the next stage. But I define it in short time bands. That forces me to be very focused, but also very intentional during that period. And the work that's required needs you to have a certain, what's it called, conviction in those time windows or in those time bands. And that's what I was saying to my team member, that every time I get into a new situation, I always define my medium-term goal of where I want to get to. And I push really hard because it forces you to act. And a lot of people have potential, they have skills, they have exposure, they have experience. They don't move as fast because they're not as committed to the next step. And to a large extent, they expect it to be consequential on either your results, your performance, your behavior. I don't leave things to chance. And in my TEDx talk, I made a statement which was, nothing in life happens by chance. And I'm a big believer in that. You create your opportunity because you push for it.
Deliberateness then is key for you, that everything is well planned, executed, calculated. And you're saying that instead of drawing up long bands, you would draw a short band as a stepping stone to that long band, and you focus intensely on that short band. Let me go to the role of external facilitators. Some call them mentors, some call them role models, some call them enablers. In church, we have different words for them. Destiny changers. Let's not go there. Let me go back to Kweku Bedwado's interview and the fact that he mentioned walking up to Vishnu Mohan when he decided he would become a CEO. Walked up to a CEO and said, tell me, what does it take to become CEO? He says he still thinks it was very crazy. Do you do crazy things sometimes?
We all do.
Okay, so he says he went to CEO and said, I want to become CEO. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, he says, can you imagine? I just walked to my CEO, fresh guy in the company, and said, tell me, how do you become CEO? And Vishnu says, sit down. and told him step by step. And he says he actually wrote it down in a notebook. He actually brought the notebook to the studio.
Oh, wow.
Looking back at the people who, at critical times in your life, provided that shoulder to take the next step. And you look back now and you're like, wow, even though I worked intensely without their guidance, I wouldn't be there.
A lot of people. In fact, I've had a lot of different influences. And this is where, sometimes young people make a mistake because they think that influences have to be people that are way above you. Some of my influences have been from people who are junior to me. Some of my influences have been from people who are, similar age, similar experience, similar level as me in career. And others have been from people that are way above me. I met a guy who was the CEO of Microsoft in 2006. And, he said something to me, which actually that year I met two people that were really instrumental in my life. One of them said, we're organizing a conference and I was responsible for bringing the keynote speaker. And I got this guy to come and speak at the conference. But throughout the interaction, I guess I did something that impressed him. So when he finally came to speak at the conference, he said, look, I want to become your mentor. And I really believe you have something that's unique, that needs to be harnessed, that needs to be honed. And you need to believe that you have something unique so that you can work towards taking that to the next step. But he volunteered to be my mentor. I never asked for it. Another guy who had just relocated to Kenya also became my mentor. He was also speaking at the same conference and invited me to Kenya to see what he was doing. He was trying to encourage Africans to come back to the continent. And that was actually one of my biggest inspirations to act on coming back to Ghana. But he went to Kenya. He's Kenyan. He went to Kenya and he transformed an industry. And he was so proud of what he was doing. When he invited me over, he took me to his business. I spent about 3 or 4 days with this guy. He took me to other competing companies and gave me access to the CEOs. And I had all these discussions with all these guys who were making things happen on the continent. And I left there with one single mind. I'd always wanted to become, well, not always, but I'd wanted to become a CEO before that time. But this made it real, because these people were, I wouldn't say ordinary. They were special in their own way, but in another way, they were still ordinary people and they could do it. And that's when I started really pushing myself to say, look, this is doable, but what steps do I take from now as a student doing an MBA to get into that point where I become CEO? And I had 40 in mind. I wanted to become CEO of a $500 million company by the age of 40.
There go the specifics. I found it finally.
and I missed that by 2 years. And, it finally happened. But in that journey, you made decisions. I had an opportunity to become CEO of, I think it was an $80 million company at the time. I turned it down. There was another opportunity, $120 million company. I turned it down. I turned it down because that wasn't my target. Now, you could come across as very arrogant in all of that. But again, you have to believe, and you have to believe in the right way. Because sometimes we believe, but we don't really have the ingredients that warrant that belief, right? And it's very easy to end up in this world where you're the only one who believes and no one else sees it. But you have to have other people see it. And I honestly believe that there was support. And, very soon I managed to get into this position where my first CEO job was for a $500 million company. And from there, my ambition, immediately I started, the question was, what's my next step? What should I aspire to next? And I said, look, this is a very rough and tough environment. I needed to do it for 2 years because 2 years gives you the credibility that it wasn't by chance, whatever you've delivered, right? 1 year is too short. 2 years is enough to bounce off that. So I was in this role for exactly 2 years. In fact, I started on the 1st of March and I finished on the 28th of March, 2 years later on. So it was exactly 2 years, not a day more, not a day less. And it was after that I joined MTN. And the ambition was, how do I become the CEO of $1 billion company? MTN was not a $1 billion company at the time, it was 800 and something million. Today, I'm proud to say MTN has been a $1 billion company for the last 2 years. So,
Clap.
yes, we can clap.
Yeah,
But
good one.
Certain ambitions and really figuring out what needs to be done. And the point you made about understanding what needs to be done is so important. Again, sometimes we imagine what needs to be done. And you can't get what needs to be done by talking to one person, right? You have to talk to a variety of people, and then you map it back to yourself to figure out what needs to be done for you. Because ultimately, your path will never be the same. My trip to Kenya gave me access to a lot of people. But from that point, I started talking to a variety of people, some CEO level, some C levels, but I had a lot of mentoring from different types of people, and it all enriched my framework or framing of the journey and the path that I needed to take to get to become a CEO.
One thing you've said that caught my attention, and I'm sure I speak for my viewers and listeners, was walking away from 2 opportunities that somebody will say, wow. You mention your middle name or your house name and say, there we go. The courage to say no to what looked like great opportunities.
Yeah.
What ingredients do you need to be able to say no? And while we are at it, how do you deal with the feeling that, what if I look back a couple of months or a year later and found out I made a big mistake? What do you need to navigate that part of life?
This is a tricky one, because others have tried the same thing and it's been a total disaster. And someone will say, I told you so, you should have taken the opportunity. You're being greedy, you're being selfish. So there are different ways to interpret the same action, which is why for me it's important that there's substance in what you believe. There has to be substance in what you believe, because it's what allows you to make the right decisions. I've taken a lot of risk in my career, right? I've taken a lot of risk. And, sometimes, when you take that risk, you yourself are not sure. You doubt yourself at some stage. And I went through a process where I took a risk and ended up staying at home for an extended period of time. And during that time, everybody was like, see, I told you, he was a fool, But my confidence never waned during that time. I had opportunities that I considered that I thought were not the best for me during that time. And even though I was at my lowest, I was still trying to make the right decision, and I was still taking risk incrementally. And, some of my very close relatives and friends were advising me to say, Selorm, you're pushing it too far now.
This is Springboard, your virtual university. And if you've been listening to the C's that have been flowing, it's because you're in the C-suite with Selorm Adadevoh, talking about conviction, talking about confidence, talking about clarity, talking about commitment. And I'm sure all the C's are lining up all the way through this conversation. Selorm, as we draw down to a close, going into the year 2024, what should we expect from MTN Ghana?
The beauty of MTN Ghana is we're committed to the Ghana market. And, I believe at the peak of our economic challenges, we actually came out with a statement to say, we believe in the market and we'll continue to invest at the same levels that we've invested historically. Now, that was very intentional because other firms had taken a step back and were just sort of waiting to watch. And we said, this is probably the time Ghana needs us the most. And this is when we should demonstrate to Ghana that we're not just here as a company, trying to drive growth in our P&L, but we're here as a company to have an impact on Ghana and contribute towards Ghana's economic development and economic viability. In 2024, you can expect the same from us. We'll continue to invest very heavily in this market, and we'll support technology development towards solving some critical problems in the market. We also hope to continue to partner with different institutions and government to ensure that we're able to do this in the most efficient manner, but also do this while we create extended value within the ecosystems that we operate. And 2024 is, 1 year before 2025, which is when Ambition 2025 actually seeds. So in terms of partnerships, in terms of our platform play, you can expect to see a lot more push and a lot more advancement in some of those areas. And I personally believe that the beneficiary of all of this will be the consumer, because you'd have more options, more technology, innovation available to you. And we should see Ghanaians get opportunities beyond what they have today based on the investments that we put in the market. It's going to be an exciting year for us.
Awesome. Let me put it down on a lighter note to wrap up. What's your favorite color?
It's a tricky question because, I'm yellow for MTN, I'm red for Liverpool. So it's very conflicting.
What about Liverpool attracts you?
What about Liverpool attracts me?
You died in the whole Liverpool. What Liverpool attracts you?
I don't know. It's one of these things that you start off on a light note, Liverpool, and then you immerse yourself. So I have this immersion theory. You immerse yourself, and you immerse yourself so deep that you can't even explain it, But
have you done Anfield?
Oh, yes.
Did you sing You Never Walk Alone?
I used to sing it all the time.
Oh,
I used to sing it all the time, Liverpool is different. Look, it's less about the club and less about even the trophies and everything else. It's actually a funny story. Can I tell you a story?
Sure.
So when I moved to Jamaica, and, I was going to Jamaica, and I love Liverpool. There's a whole Liverpool club in Boston. There's a Liverpool club in the UK. Then I sent a Facebook message to the Liverpool Club of Jamaica that I was moving there. And then they said, we'll pick you up from the airport. I said, no, it's an official trip. My company's going to pick me up. They said, no, we'll pick you up. And I said, no.
Cheers.
Like, everything has been arranged. Anyway, I get to the airport, and there's like 6 Liverpool supporters with a flag waiting for me, okay? I've never met these guys before, okay? And they insisted that I'm going to sit in their car. So the car that came to pick me up had to drive behind these Liverpool guys. They took me to this club where they meet on Sundays and Saturdays to watch the game, introduced me to everybody else before they released me to
now go
take
and
it
do
home.
your.
That's just the power of Liverpool. It's incredible. It's incredible.
I'll tell a story next time I interview you.
Oh,
I have to prepare the story. It must be that's this. What's your favorite? You're talking about Jamaica. You've traveled to different countries. Which one is your favorite?
My all-time favorite country is St. Lucia.
Why?
It has everything that represents my personality. It's beautiful. The people are natural. They're themselves. It's a smallish type of island. They love music. They love reggae. I mean, when waiters serve you, they're on rollerblades or roller skates, and they're dancing, they're singing. It's just everything I value in life around authenticity and being yourself. And even in leadership, I try to be as close to my true self as possible. And St. Lucia kind of represents that. It has water. I love water. And it has incredible water. And the people are just really nice. So,
what kind of music do you like?
I like all sorts of music. I mean, I have a very broad range of music appreciation. But up there, on top of everything else, is reggae. For some reason.
When do you feel at your very best?
When do I feel at my very best? When do I feel at my very best? I'm not a morning person. I'm a night person. I'm a night owl. These days, nature is challenging that. But it's a difficult question. Somehow, I feel at my best sort of mid-morning-ish, when, a little bit of the early morning has gone away. And I just feel really strong and powerful.
Finally, what gives you the most joy?
What gives me the most joy is, that's a very interesting question.
That's why stock in trade, asking the tough ones.
What gives you the most joy? Look, honestly, I'm very soft when things come from the heart. And, you know, I'm a big stickler for pretense. I'm a big stickler for just trying to impress me. I get the most joy when I feel like it's coming from the heart, whatever it is. You know, it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be very small. It could be extremely small. As long as it's coming from the heart, I'm very soft on it, and it gives me the most joy.
Authenticity.
Authenticity, it is, yes. It wasn't a C, so I didn't want to say it. I was trying to find
No,
the right word for it. But yes, authenticity for me is what it is. Yeah.
Selorm, it's been a wonderful conversation with you, and I thank you for your time. And I speak for our listeners and viewers that every year when we get to do this, it means so much to all of us that you can find time in your busy schedule to do this. Selorm, look into this camera and just talk to somebody who says, my story is kind of, I've plateaued, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do next, and I don't know if I would ever be able to one day sit on TV or radio and talk about my achievements. What would you say to them, Selorm?
Look, what I'll say to this person is your definition of plateau is coming from within, right? And first of all, we need to start to think about what you really want to do and what you believe in. You know, my story has been a story that has been plagued with different phases of my life. And there were different stages where I felt that I was plateauing. When I was in technology, moving into business, I felt that I was plateauing, but I had to ask the question, what is the next step? And how do I take what I already have to influence that next step? I wasn't throwing away my technology experience when I went into business. I said, how do I make this an asset to that next step in the journey? Now, by normal, I guess you can call this economics, there's something called the S-curve, which, you know, you go through a growth phase, you get to the top, and the S-curve starts to decline. So it's natural that you start to decline. And one of the things I learned in business school, sorry to be a bit academic, was the only way you can continue to grow is to re-innovate. And then you make a second S-curve on top of that. So if you feel you're plateauing, maybe you're on top of one S-curve, you need to re-innovate to get to the next stage. And usually that's triggered by your next belief, which is where you want to go. So I would encourage you, it's normal to get to a point where you feel you're flat, you're plateauing, but don't give up because of that, because you need a new S-curve to get you to the next step. So look out for that next ambition, and it will drive you. And believe, because you can do it. Thank you.
Believe because you can do it, and look for that next S-curve. The thoughts of Selorm Adadevoh, CEO of MTN Ghana. Over the past hour, we've been exploring different themes, including what the business has for us stakeholders in the year ahead, and also what they've had to navigate in the year 2023. And in the second part of this program, Selorm has walked us through his own life and the dance between conviction, ambition, preparation, redefinition, failure, resilience, deliberateness, and the influence of his life, and that interesting part about being able to walk away from what looks like a golden opportunity. Now, which of these lessons is your big one? Let's continue this conversation on social media. The slides are all out there. Let's talk. Which of these points from Selorm Adadevoh is really inspiring you to take on the year 2024 with, as the young people say, vim and verve? So let's continue the conversation on social media as we engage these thoughts in your virtual university. Springboard has been brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Ghana and the Enterprise Group, with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. So let me say a big thank you to you, Selorm Adadevoh, for making time for this conversation, and have a blessed end of year. And if I may say so, Happy New Year in advance.
Thank you very much, Albert. It's a pleasure. It's an honor as well. And honestly, a privilege to be here with you. I wish you the very best. Keep doing what you're doing, impacting the youth. And I wish you a Happy New Year in advance as well. Cheers.
Thank you very much. So God bless you, and God bless you.
He's always turning around.